Hey everybody, welcome to a new week with Unscrambled Faith. I'm your host, Megan Clark. Thank you so much for joining us for the very first time. I am so grateful. Otherwise, if you've been here for a little bit, you know that seems like I've been taking a little bit of a hiatus. I think it's been a couple weeks or so since we recorded the last podcast, and it's been a minute. It's been a good break. It's been busy. I definitely knew that this week was the week for me to get back on track and get back into recording more podcasts, more content for you guys. This is something that I thoroughly enjoy. And the last time, I don't know if you by chance were listening or watching the last podcast with us, but I did share a little bit about new things that were happening in my life. And I feel like that's honestly kind of sort of for the most part what's taken up the last couple weeks of my time. I have a new business that I launched, which I am absolutely head over heels very excited about. My company is called A Touch of Melba Jean. I think that's maybe what I might talk a little bit more on next week's or the next time we record a podcast, which I want to side note, I'm thinking about maybe doing that every 2 weeks. But yeah, so that's what we'll probably get into a little bit more on the next podcast. But that is the name, A Touch of Melba Jean. It is in honor of my late grandmother, Melba Jean, Melba Jean Farrell to be exact. And I'm excited. It's something that's been in the making. It's a business in itself that I have thought about for well over a year, if not longer. It's been kind of an idea, like a little glimmer of my idea that I've had I've honestly put a pin in for the last couple of years, and it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. It's something that I know that some of my friends have come to me and talked with me about, even honestly some of my customers that I already had with my other business. And I was excited. I'm very excited for what's to come and yeah, all the things. But just kind of, I don't know if you're listening to this or you're watching the video and you're a business owner yourself, but if by chance you are, if you're a small business owner, the work that it takes, right, to get everything off the ground and to be able to, especially these days, get content out and get your name out there and figure out all the logistics, right? The things that are just not so fun, but then later one comes to things that are fun. And so it's definitely been a whirlwind of an experience, and I know that I'm going to keep learning and keep growing, but all in all, I'm very excited for what's to come. But yeah, so that's taken up a good amount of my time over the last couple weeks. And other than that, my husband and I got back from our trip this last week. We went on a business / personal trip, I guess you could say. Honestly, this time it was actually more business than personal. But we flew out to Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've never been to Minneapolis, that's a mouthful, let alone Minnesota. So it was definitely an experience in itself. I will say that it's not necessarily the area for me. No offense if you were listening to this and you were from there. Sometimes I feel like people could quite frankly say the same about Texas because that's where I'm from. But yeah, so, on one hand, it was super fun and great to be able to say that I've visited a new state, a new area, and there were some things that we got to do that otherwise we wouldn't have been able to do if we were anywhere else. But it was an incredible trip, and business-wise, learned a lot. However, what's interesting is there were a couple of takeaways from that specific trip that I feel like perhaps inspired this specific podcast. But before we get into that, as always, traditional, we gotta talk about my earrings. So today I'm rocking my checkered earrings. In case you were watching the video, if not, if you're listening in, I'll let me describe them to you guys. But I'm wearing my checkered pair of earrings today, and I've got bright yellow smiley faces on them. And coincidentally, they not only are matching my nails that I got done the other day, the colors of my nails, hot pink and hot yellow. Neon yellow, but matching my shirt as well. So I've got a little situation going on. So definitely not intending to match my nails, but I did purposely match earrings to my shirt. So, and I'm loving this undershirt. It's actually very comfortable. But yeah, so let's go ahead and dive in. It's been a minute. And of course, let's see. Oh, yeah, okay. And we're back. Hopefully it didn't glitch too much, but I had to check on something real quick. But yeah, so it's been a minute. So let's go ahead and dive in. So like I said, my trip this last week has certainly inspired this specific reason why I want to do this podcast. And we're going to talk a little bit about basically what happens when things don't go according to plan. So let me go ahead and set the, before we talk about all of the deeper things, I guess let me set the scene for y'all. So, like I said, I just came back from this business trip, and without getting too much on my soapbox, there were a couple of things that happened along the way that we're just not really expecting. Okay, so if you don't know me, just for those of y'all that don't know me personally, I'm a plus size girl. I'm a curvy girl. I'm a plus size girly. So what does that mean? That means that whenever I travel places and there are certain theater seating or certain rooms that I go to, whether it's I don't know, like a play or a concert or a sporting game, baseball game, whatever you name it. The seats don't always accommodate plus size people, somebody like myself. And that's just the sad truth, especially if it's an older theater or if it's an auditorium seating. It's something that I'm quite frankly, unfortunately, like I'm just used to it for the most part. Try to do my homework and my due diligence ahead of time. So for example, I'm more likely, sadly enough, not going to miss out on an opportunity to maybe perhaps go listen or see something that I otherwise would have normally gone to or seen. But if the seating is not going to accommodate me, I typically won't go to that venue because I'm just not going to be uncomfortable. There have been circumstances in the past that I just didn't know about the seating. I got it there, wherever I was at, bought the tickets, got all the things right. And then you get there and then you find out that like the seats are uncomfortable. Then you just have to pivot, right? Like I'm already in the moment. That's kind of like what happened. So we're on this business trip and there's a specific room that everybody's gathering in for about 4 days. And the main room, not all the seating, but the seating so there was like, kind of like, I guess if you were to go to like a game, like if you're going to go watch like a baseball game, or not really baseball per se, but it's mostly football, baseball. Maybe if you go into a concert, there's typically like kind of like an upper balcony, right? And then like a lower, like floor seating, right? So they had floor seating, upper balcony. Well, the upper balcony part, the seating there was for sure, hands down, not accommodating. Not only for myself, again, being a plus size woman, but also not accommodating to those around me that I noticed that were, just for whatever reason, not able to get up the stairs, And for me personally, the seating was just not comfortable. In fact, I was very shocked at the seating, considering we were at a convention center, because it reminded me of the seats that would be basically like in the late 90s, early 90s that you would see on a lot of like older college campuses. So it's like the seats that have like the little fold out desk that go in front of you, right? Somewhere where like a lecture hall, basically. And this was not something that I would have otherwise honestly guessed that the seating was going to be like for this specific event that I was at for work. And it was very disappointing. It was very disappointing. Now I will say, thank goodness, for everyone else that like I said, the floor seating was rather comfortable. I found that out later down in the week. So, like I said, I'm setting the scene for y'all. So, the first day we get there and we're going inside, and my husband and I are going up to like the upper balcony. We're getting ready to sit down. And I know from the moment I even saw the seats, that it just was not going to happen. And it's interesting, like my mindset, because I mean, for me, it's something that I've experienced for, a number of years, so it's not like it just came to a surprise to me. However, where I was a little distraught was just the lack of attention whenever we got further down to the floor and trying to find somebody to like get me like a different seat, or if we could figure out like an alternative. No one was really accommodating in that way. And I will say there were a few individuals that were blessed and fortunate, lucky enough to have other individuals help them out and find an alternative method for them. It just didn't work out for my husband and I. And we found ourselves at that point leaning against the wall, which was like not comfortable at all. And we did that for the first day. So the first day we were leaning up against the wall for, oh my gosh, it seemed like 2 hours. Our legs and our feet were going to sleep. We sat on the floor, stood back up, sat on the floor. And, what was interesting is the next day we had discovered that there was a different room that was more of like, they called it the quiet room. So it was like if you were somebody that struggle with PTSD, or somebody that just gets overstimulated with crowds, or you don't do well, panic attacks or anxiety, or, if there's whatever the need for a quieter room would be, they had that to accommodate. And it was incredible because there was an infinite number of seats, and by all means, it was definitely a lot quieter in that room. And it was nice, I will say. And that was where we learned mentally that, like, we had to pivot, because obviously if we were going to be seated up in the upper balcony, we knew the seats were not going to be accommodating, not comfortable for me. And honestly, it was the best decision that we could have made, going to the quieter room. It was a win-win for us. And so that's where, like, it was that. And then, what else? We, like, midweek, there was an event that we were going to go to, and we discussed it among ourselves, and we were like, look, we're going to be too tired from the day, even though the event was going to be really exciting and a lot of fun, and all of our friends were going to it. Again, we had to pivot again and take into account, like, not only how tired we were, but mentally, physically tired from doing all the things all day. And we knew that it was in our best interest just to call it a day, get some food, go back to our hotel, relax, chill, reboot our batteries basically, and get in bed early so that way we wake up early the next day. And what's interesting is that I found through the course of this last week, while we were out of town, that it seemed like there was, like, a moment after moment where I was having to, like, pivot, or we were having to pivot and look for an alternative or the other side of things. Or maybe perhaps there was, like, a plan. Like, I'll even say, another thing that came up too was that I had to come clean. I will say a couple weeks, that's a lie. At least a week or two before we were flying out. And this event for the company that I work for, we signed up for this event months and months ago. Okay. And I had great intentions, because I signed not only myself up for a 5K with our company, but my husband as well. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to, and I had good intentions, because I was like, I'm going to work. I've done 5Ks before. I've done mud runs, if you know what mud runs are, in the past. And I, at one point in another lifetime, was a very active person. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to set my sights on this 5K. I'm going to get up at least every couple of days, every other day, get up, do a little walking, and just start training, like, not like aggressively, because it's a 5K, you know what I mean? But I knew that I was going to have to get active, at least, to be able to make sure that I didn't injure myself, or I was actually capable of completing this 5K. So fast forward to a week or two before we fly out for this event, totally dropped the ball, forgot to tell my husband about it. Had to come clean, right? Had to come clean in that moment. Tell him, like, by the way, sign us up for a 5K. But then in that moment, I realized that him and I both did not have the proper shoes for said 5K. And that was a deal breaker for me. And yes, I could have just, because here's the thing, we paid to be at this 5K. And you would have thought that I was like, you know what, we paid for it, we're just going to show up, we're going to get some photos, we're going to push through it, persevere. Because here's the thing, I will admit that I do have tennis shoes, but I don't have 5K tennis shoes, if that makes sense. If you know, you know. And I've learned my lesson in the past. Like, I know that you need to have the proper tennis shoe. And yes, granted, 2 weeks before we flew out, I could have definitely went down and ordered online a pair of tennis shoes. But you have to break them in, right? It's a whole thing. I mean, I've done Avon walks before. That's like, I can't remember how many miles that was. Like, well over, I think, 35. It was like 50 miles, I think. It was like a 2-day event, but 50 miles at least. So it's like things in the past, like, I've trained for things like that, right? So I know I'm not an amateur. Like, I'm not going to be naive and go to this 5K. So it was kind of just feeling defeated. It is what it is. I didn't plan for it. I forgot, I dropped the ball. And so that was another moment where I mentally had to pivot and be like, you know what? It's okay. Let's try again next year, right? Let's plan accordingly. I meant well, but it just didn't work out. And so here's the thing, that what happens when things don't go according to plan, right? What happens when things don't go according to plan? We have to pivot, right? We have to pivot. we find the other side of things? Because I'll tell y'all what, I had moments this last week where I was on the struggle bus trying to find the positive side to things, especially when you have individuals around you that are influencing you, right? Your environment could be influencing you. You can have individuals that are influencing you, whoever you're sharing space with, how you feel physically, mentally, all the things. And, I will say that I think if these situations would have happened any other time than this year, let alone last week, it would have been a very different situation. But I found that even though there were hiccups along the way, thankfully I was able to find the glimmers, the positive pockets in my week this last week that otherwise I wouldn't have expected. And I honestly feel like that I think that if I didn't change my mindset, if I wouldn't have taken a step back, reanalyze, move some things around, change my mind on certain things, I always firmly believe that everything happens for a reason, and the decisions that we made, otherwise the good things that came along the way, if I would have stayed so focused, for example, on what happened on day one, and we didn't have, like, pivot and find the other room and change our mindset, and if I didn't try to dig deep and try to find things along the way through those 4 days of happiness, or making memories with my friends that I was meeting, and getting to talk to somebody about the things that I'm passionate about. If I didn't look deep for those, if I stayed so stuck on one thing and didn't budge, I feel like that, I don't even feel like I know that would have changed and projected like my entire mindset and my entire trip, and everything would have been so different. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, when we are in those moments, or even like not even at the end of the day, but if we are present in those moments, when we know that we're going to have to pivot, or when we know that we're like, I know I'm going to have to find the other side of things, the brighter side of the thing, but like, I just don't really want to. But here's the question that we need to ask ourselves. Do we know our limits? Do we know how much it's going to take for us to, like, when you have your limit, right? Like when you are holding on to so many things and you're not processing it and you're not pivoting, right? And you're letting one thing after another affect you over and over and over. And it just kind of builds and builds and builds, right? What happens when we hold on to it? It's physically taking a toll on us. Mentally, it's for sure going to take a toll on us. And then it almost like exceeds and just exuberates out of our bodies. Then anyone else around us is going to be able to pick up on that negative energy, that toxic energy. One specific scripture that I want to tie in to what we're talking about this week is Proverbs chapter 19, verse 21, and this is in the New International Version. Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. So what does this tell us? This tells us that there's always a bigger picture at work. One of the things that I love so much is the word pivot. Y'all should know this. If you've been listening to me long enough, pivot, I say it over and over. It's one of my favorite words. But pivoting isn't failure. It's having the faith that although our plans may be good, intentional, or even personal, it's the redirection that matters the most. It's the redirection. It's not necessarily so it is important for us to address first and foremost how something is making us feel, but we just don't want to wallow in that. Once we address and we can name and pinpoint how something is making us feel, then we need to ask ourselves, what are we going to do with it? What are we going to do about it? This week, I want you to reflect on where in your life do you feel the most resistant? Is it an invitation to pivot rather than push? And also, where do you need to shift your expectations? It's a short one, I know. I didn't want to keep you for that long. But here's the thing. I feel like that this is something that I don't really want to dig too much into. I feel like that what I've said was just enough, that thinking about, because like I said, this whole last week that I was on this business trip, it seemed like there was moment after moment that I had to pivot, that I had to know my limit, right? Our limits, knowing that maybe going to that event wasn't a good idea because we weren't going to have enough energy to do so, right? And it worked out for us because we felt better the next day and we were able to soak up all the things. And I would say my all-time two things that were my, actually, we'll just say three. My three all-time high on this trip was that, for one, I got to spend one-on-one time with my spouse. Don't really get that often. Number two, I would say getting to meet up with friends that live out of state. I love creating reels. We created some content. We got to meet up. We got to catch up. So that was so much fun as well. And the third thing is that, again, going back to content, I love AI. I love all things about ChatGPT, AI. And I actually got to meet up with not only somebody that works for the home office of my business and talk out and nerd out with them and talk all things AI, but then they asked me to hang out for a little bit jokingly, and I took them serious. I was like, you're playing around, but I'm serious. And I got to hang out with them for a little bit. And then guess what? I got to pour into others and share my love and my experience with others who had questions about all of this and what to do and what is it like and where do I start? and that, you guys, that was like the cherry on top for my business week. So even though it started at a low, I ended on a high note. So that's where I want you guys to reflect on this week. Let me know in the comments. Reach out. Let me know, what is something that in the last week or so that you feel stuck on, that you're stuck on, that you need to pivot from, that maybe you need to go into a different direction, or maybe perhaps you've already pivoted from it. And let me know what your experience was like. But thank y'all for so much, like I said, hanging out with me. I think at this point, like I said, just to give myself a little bit of a break and room to keep working on my new business and my current business and all the things in life, that at this point, I think I'm going to pivot. I told y'all like how much I like that word. We're going to pivot, and the podcast is going to be about every 2 weeks. But if this is something that you feel like strongly that you could share with somebody, that you got a key takeaway from, do me a favor, share it with somebody. Like, subscribe, all the things, you guys. Thank you so much for your support. Give me a review. Let me know what you think. Also, if there's anything you want me to talk about in future podcasts, that would be awesome too. But thanks so much for hanging out. And until next time, don't forget to unscramble your faith and find clarity in the chaos. Bye, guys.